Good morning. I'm Katherine Jacobsen, the U.S. and Canada Program Coordinator with the Committee to Protect Journalists. I'm glad to be here with you all today to introduce the Committee to Protect Journalists' new legal guide for members of the media working in Canada. The guide was written in collaboration with the Thomson Reuters Foundation and was a product of many hours of phone calls with the president of the Canadian Association of Journalists, Brent Jolly, as well as reporters on the ground. A bit of background on CPJ. The Committee to Protect Journalists works internationally to promote and protect journalists and media freedoms around the world. We also publish comprehensive reports on killed and imprisoned journalists. In these reports, we've documented a steady erosion of press freedom and, with it, a frightening increase in attacks on journalists. In the past year, CPJ documented how journalist killings rose nearly 50% from 2021, illustrating a precipitous decline in press freedom globally. I don't need to tell you that the situation for journalists in Canada is incomparable with countries like Russia and China. However, incursion on journalists' rights and concerning anti-media sentiment that became especially evident during last year's convoy protests were of increasing concern to CPJ. Brent and I speak regularly about media trends in Canada and how or if CPJ can help. The need for a legal guide came up in many of our conversations, most notably when Amber Bracken and Michael Toledano were arrested when covering land defense protests in British Columbia in November 2021. The guide covers legal protections available to journalists during protests, the legal grounds to arrest a journalist reporting on protests, and practical tips for facing charges, law enforcement powers to take possession of journalist devices, and resources available to journalists once they are detained, arrested, or charged. We hope you'll take a look at the guide, which is available on CPJ's website. And I wanted to say a big thank you to Brent and the CAJ for providing on-the-ground insights that made this guide possible, and to the Thomson Reuters Foundation that stewarded the creation of this valuable resource. Thank you for your time.
Hi, everybody. Bonjour tout le monde. It's a great honor to be here today with my colleagues Katherine Jacobsen and also Chris Waddell from the Canada Press Freedom Project to endorse in the release of CPJ's new legal guide for Canada. I think, frankly, it's an invaluable resource that should be on the table of every reporter and editor in any common law jurisdiction in Canada. We've been seeing between the Freedom Convoy, so-called Freedom Convoy, homeless encampment enforcements, and so many other, inabilities for journalists to do their jobs. I think this is a real critical document and something really at the source of people's needs today. I would also add that, in the wake of various court cases and infractions with law enforcement, I think this is a really helpful research tool to help educate law enforcement about the rights of reporters, so that infractions like Katherine was mentioning with Amber Bracken and Michael Toledano and others don't have a way of repeating themselves over and over again. So thank you very much to Katherine for her work, and I hope this will really pay dividends in the long run.
Thank you, Brent, and good morning. I'm Chris Waddell. I'm a professor emeritus at the School of Journalism and Communication at Carleton University, and also involved in the creation of the Canada Press Freedom Project. The Canada Press Freedom Project is a tracker that tracks press freedom violations across the country. We started it thanks to funding from the Michener Foundation. You can find it at canadapressfreedom.ca. What you'll find on the site is since the start of 2021, we've been tracking press freedom violations in 12 different categories: arrests and criminal charges, equipment search and seizure, equipment damage, subpoena and legal orders, chilling statements, denials of access, leak cases, border stops, physical attacks, intimidation, threat, and verbal harassment, and online threats, and categories of other press freedom violations that don't fit in any of those previous 11 ones. The site works in a fairly simple form. There's an incident report that we ask anyone who thinks they've been a victim of a press freedom violation to complete and send to us. We will then validate and ensure that the information in the form is all correct. Once that's done, we'll write a story and put it on the website, and you'll be able to see it on the website. The site is searchable by any of the 12 categories and also by province. We've also got a map so you can see where things are, and you can also, in addition to tracking the incidents of press freedom since the start of 2021. Since the start of 2022, we're also trying to track online threats against journalists. There's a separate filing form for online threats for people to complete and send to us. We will again do the same validation, speak to the people who are the subject of the threat. It's not our intention to reproduce the threat, but we do want to keep track of where the threats exist and some details of what the threats actually are. You can search the site and find that information. You can find our methodology on the site for each of the categories, and we also have an annual report on the site which describes the process we went through to build the Press Freedom Tracker. It's modeled on the U.S. Press Freedom Tracker in the United States, but it's a little bit different, and we're trying to track online threats as well as all the other press freedom violations. So we also have on the site a list of our supporters and an advisory board, and we're also fundraising at the moment to try to have enough staff to run the site and keep it going. So that's a brief description of how the site works. Please check it out, canadapressfreedom.ca, and if you have any questions or issues, suggestions, or anything else, please send them to us. Thank you very much.